Hey, welcome to My Mama Summer. My name is Aimee Devlin. I'm an unconventional millennial mother living abroad, building a business and raising children while stepping into who she's meant to be. This podcast is an audio version of my newsletter, which you can find at mymamasummer.com. The episodes are short, wholehearted reflections of my life as a mother, business owner, and everyday human committed to being the best she can be. Pop in your headphones, grab a cuppa and a cookie, and take this time to just be with me. On today's episode of My Mama Summer, I want to get into friendships. Creating friendships as an adult. This is something that's been on my mind and something I've been actively doing since we moved cities about a month ago. And when I say a month ago, I cannot believe that it's only been a month since we moved our family from Ajijic in Jalisco to the beautiful colonial city of San Miguel de Allende in Guanajuato in Mexico. So if you're catching up, we moved our family to Mexico from Australia back in 2021 during the height of the pandemic. And we did that for multiple reasons that you can go listen to in episode 7, which is called Redefining Home, How We Left Australia and Found Ourselves in Mexico. One of the challenges that I've been experiencing since we moved here. And I say challenge, it's not like this is on my mind 24 hours, 7 days a week, but it's something that I've noticed within myself when I'm meeting with people. And I'm curious if other people have experienced this as well, which is why I want to dive into it. Now, I'm someone who I would say has some anxious tendencies. I'm not paralyzed by those tendencies. I've been coming away from incredible conversations and meetings with dear friends and over-analysing myself. I'll say things to myself internally like, oh, was I talking too much? What are they going to think of me? Was I really listening? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. And I can liken it to how I felt, for instance, when I was first dating Brendan. You know, when you really like someone and you don't want to put a bad foot forward, you're really questioning everything you say to them because you're fearful that you're going to make the wrong turn. You're going to say something wrong. And so I'm not doing this in the moment. I'm not thinking this in the moment, but afterwards, I'm over-analysing these experiences and these conversations that I'm having with these new friends. And I think this is a really interesting thing for me to notice. Now, some greater context to this is that over the last 3 years, I have not had any friendships with women who are in the same phase of life as me. Young mothers, raising children, within a marriage, having moved countries. And now I'm finding myself meeting multiple people who are in that same phase of life, who are experiencing the same things. And I'm so excited by that it is putting me into analysis paralysis because I don't want to let these things go. I've been so starved of human contact over the last 3 years in our life in Ajijic that I almost feel desperate to connect with people. And so I find myself, and my husband would agree with this, it feels like I've got 3 years worth of words to share with my new friends. And I'm wondering if that is too much for them. Now, when I talk about this with Brennan, my husband, he assures me that I'm perfectly likable, I'm not weird, he's not experiencing it from his perspective, which may mean that the other people aren't. But in my mind, I'm awkward, I'm overbearing, I'm too much. And I just want to feel relaxed and at ease inside of myself and not feel so self-conscious. But I know at the same time where this is coming from. It's this combination of this deep desire to have deep, lasting friendships with people that I love and care about. And it's also because I have a toddler and I don't have a whole lot of time where I get to have deep and meaningful conversations with other adults that I love and adore. When you have a small child, the time that you have for that is diminished greatly. And I'm getting emotional as I'm talking about this because it's something that changes dramatically when you have a child. Your life is enriched in so many beautiful ways, and it's also diminished in some, and it's okay for that to be the reality. And I think this is why I find myself being so paralyzed by this desire to be liked, because deep, connected conversation is so important to me. And I've been starved of that for years. And it's so beautiful that I'm coming out the other side of this to have those conversations and to be seen again I felt so invisible in many ways over the last 3 years. But that's all changing, and it's due to my decision to put myself first and to ask for what I wanted, to move somewhere that allowed me to be more of me. So I feel like I'm in a rebirth of sorts. I feel like an awkward teenager. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I feel like an awkward teenager who's just been sent to a new school, who has different clothes, who doesn't know anyone. I'm the girl who has glasses and is super awkward and is trying to make friends. And I'm really surprised that I've got so emotional when I'm sharing this with you. But if you can think back to a time in your life, that time in your life where you were an awkward teenager, if you were one, I was definitely one. And imagine having to relive that again. I never thought I would have to relive that part of my life again. But I've spoken before on this podcast about the different octaves of healing and when you're committed to self-growth and shadow work and meeting yourself in different ways, how you often meet the same challenge in a different way. And that's exactly what's happening for me right now. It's pulling to the surface my insecurities, my tendencies, shining a light on them and asking me to look at them. And so I am. And what better way to do that rather than looking at them privately, but to do it on a podcast with other humans in the world. The reason I do this is because the more light we bring to these things in our life that we think are shameful or things we should hide, the more free we are. And I want to feel free. I don't want to feel like I'm the only person in life who feels awkward creating new friendships. I know that's not the truth. And I'd greatly appreciate it if you also have felt this in your life, that you are able to share that with me as well, because the more we share our quote shame, the more free we are. So there's a few aspects of this to unpack that I've been unpacking for myself, one of which is my self-talk. And I'm going to do a separate episode on self-compassion because this is a huge piece of my quote inner work puzzle. It's something I've been deeply unpacking behind the scenes. It also came up in a tarot and astrology reading that I had earlier this year as the main piece of the puzzle that I need to unlock to be able to access the higher levels of me. And when I say higher levels, I don't mean ascension or this type of thing. I mean the most aligned, authentic, integral parts of me. Integrity is a huge part of my path as well. The more able I am to unpack that with myself and do it openly with you, the more open my path becomes in life. So what I realized earlier this year and through the tarot and astrology reading, which was an anchor for me to highlight this part of myself and to look at it, was that my internal voice is deeply, deeply scathing. And I've been doing a lot of work to figure out why that is. One of the mentors that I've been looking to for this work to understand my internal voice is a lady called Catherine Fabrizio, and I hope to have her on the podcast to share more information about this topic with you in the future. But she describes something called good daughter syndrome. And what I've discovered is that I have been stuck for a very long time in what she calls the good daughter trap. And she talks about the difference between confidence and self-doubt. And self-doubt is something that I have carried for a very long time. And this is what's fueling my criticality when I'm creating new friendships. And she says that if we struggle with self-doubt, it's highly likely to be related to our relationship with our mum. So when we have a mother that's supportive, we internalize her voice and we take it in as support. It's like this warm, comforting jumper that hugs us and provides us with this layer of protection against all the challenges that we bump up against as we experience life as it unfolds for us. A mother like this instills the idea and the reality that she believes in us, she trusts that we'll make the right choices, and because of that we feel confident and we're comfortable with our decisions, and we know that people make mistakes, but it doesn't mean anything about us. In opposition to that, a good daughter has a mum that tends to criticize us, and over time we internalize that criticism and it becomes our self-doubt. And this results in us chronically second-guessing ourselves. We find it hard to make decisions and feel confident about them because our mums teach us that we can't solely rely on our own judgment, or she projects her fear upon us so that we internalize that fear, and that's what we hear when we're making decisions. So what happens as children is that these criticisms and these fears become this tape inside of our head, and we internalize it. It's a representation of our mother. It's not even our own voice. And this is what I've noticed inside of my own brain. She's become part of my self-concept. This internalized mum voice is there all the time, and quite often it's undermining my confidence and making me feel like my own judgment isn't good enough. Now, this is an area I've been doing a lot of work on. I've read a ton of books, and I'm really excited to share some different mentors with you. So if you feel these same tapes playing in your mind, or you have experienced a difficult mother relationship in your life, that you can access some of the resources that I have over the last few years. Now, I'm someone who has a pretty strong intuition, and I listen to that. I have strong instincts. If you've heard of human design, I am someone with a splenic authority, which means that I have a very strong instinct that I listen to, and I clearly know my yes from my no. So in the moment, I'm okay. But what happens for me personally is later on, maybe when I'm in the car or laying in bed or I've woken up in the morning, this is when that voice comes in. And this is when the distrust, the lack of confidence, the self-doubt, and the judgment rears its head. And what's so interesting is that it's not even me. It's not my voice. And so that's a really beautiful realization for me to have, because now I'm able to see the difference, to hear the difference, to know myself from my mother, my grandmother, the red thread in my life, my maternal line. And so after spending my entire childhood and most of my adulthood so far, except for the last, say, couple of years, internalizing that fear, that voice, that judgment, I'm in the process of externalizing that now, removing it from my mind, from my reality, and seeing it for what it truly is. I'm an awesome human. I bring a lot of joy and great conversation and laughter and depth and guidance to conversations and friendships. I'm an incredible listener, and I don't need crippling self-doubt to tell me otherwise. But it's there. I recognize it. I'm working through it. I'm not pretending it's not there. I've just shared it with the world, and I know I'm not the only person. Becoming a mother is such a journey. Often we lose ourselves. We're rebirthed as an entirely different human. We have to get to know ourselves again, whilst also not having much time to do that. Because for me, the time I value the most is time on my own, time in nature, time with myself to allow thoughts to surface, to process those and allow them to unfold and come to different conclusions, and to unpack them and see what's actually going on beneath the surface. When you don't have that time to allow that process to unfold is when you find yourself in these positions where you're anxious or judging yourself or fearful. And so quite often the advice that I need to take for myself is to take some time out, which really hasn't happened since we've moved. It's been a whirlwind of a month. One of the reasons I started this podcast is because I'm sick of seeing the highlight reel on social media. I'm sick of people pretending that life is all roses. I'm sick of people pretending that starting a business is easy. I'm sick of people painting the perfect version of motherhood or relationships or work life or balance. And I'm someone who is heavily grounded. I'm a triple earth in astrology. I have a Capricorn sun, a Taurus moon, and Virgo rising. My incarnation cross in human design is tension. I smell bullshit. If we look at the gene keys, my life's work is gene key 38, and that gives me the gift of perseverance. I'm one of the most resilient people you will ever meet. And gene key 38 tells us that I'm here to challenge everything that takes away an individual's freedom and make them less than they could be. So why not put all this out there on the table? Your shame, everything you hide from the world, makes you less free than you could be. My greatest challenge in life, gene key 39, is to overcome the human tendency to take everything personally. What was I saying earlier? Let's talk about that critical internal voice, the self-doubt, the judgment, the lack of compassion. That doesn't give me room to breathe. If I'm paralyzed by what other people think of me, I'm not going to fulfill my life's work. So as you might have guessed, I love using different tools that highlight who I am and what my path is, that create more of who I am, not take me away from that. I'm not into fluffiness. I'm not into toxic positivity and pretending that I don't go through challenges, that everything's fine all the time. I'm repulsed by that. It's my job and my role to show you those parts of myself so you feel comfortable sharing yours with the world too. So thanks for listening about my struggle with creating friendships. And I say struggle, but it's not been a struggle externally. It's an internal battle. On one hand, I'm having a beautiful conversation and connection with people. And on the other hand, I'm going home and dismantling every second of what was said and imagining saying something else and creating meaning and reasons for why I should have said something else. Is that useful? I believe not. Is it happening? Yes. Am I working through it? Yes. Am I sharing it with you? Yes. We all have different tendencies. This is one of my current tendencies, something I'm exploring with you here on my podcast because I'm committed to being as human as I possibly can. I believe that the more of us that show up authentically and responsibly online without pretending our life is a highlight reel 24/7, the better world we're creating for our daughters and our sons. As I've said previously on this podcast, I'm incredibly grateful that the internal voice of my daughter will not mirror mine because of the love, intention, and consciousness that I put into parenting her. And that's not to say that my mum or my parents didn't care about how they parented me. But what's different about our generation is the access that we have to self-reflective materials and resources and courses via the internet. They didn't have that. Our parents, their parents were stuck with their programming. They still have their programming. And most of them will never uncover that programming or shift it because A, they don't even realize it exists. B, they're too scared to go there. And C, they deny access to the tools that will help them do that. I'm being stereotypical here because some people of older generations will do this work, but I believe and what I've seen out there is that it's a small minority. I had this conversation with Brendan one night recently. We were asking ourselves, what is the difference between our generation and Gen X and the boomers? Because there is this difference. The boomers seem to have zero desire to reflect on themselves. They don't want to look at their programming. They don't want to be responsible for what they say or do. And Gen X is a little bit more likely to do that, but they're not digital natives. We're not even digital natives, but we've accessed what is available to us and we've embraced it. Whereas Gen X tends to, from what I've seen, once again, generalizing still want to separate the professional from the personal. And they still have that tendency to have two separate lives, to want to sweep what's happening for them underneath the carpet, pretend it's not there, and project a different version of themselves out there in the world, their professional version of themselves. What's happened with us is we've embraced the internet, we've embraced healing tools. We're the first generation that has done that. And that's what I see when I look around us. There's people doing it in so many different ways. We have a huge contingent of psychologically oriented people. There's a lot of research into narcissism and emotional immaturity, self-care, you name it, it's happening. The therapists are generally my age. Then we have the somatic component, the body-based therapies. That's massive. We have plant medicine, we have ritual, we have some of the things that I've already mentioned today, things like the gene keys, human design, astrology, tarot, divination. That's another component. We have the sort of self-development junkies, the Tony Robbins, NLP, limiting beliefs, reprogramming. We've got that section. There is an abundance of healing and transformation tools available to us today. And our generation has accessed them. We've embraced them. We've gone all in on them. And the generations before us look at us and think, we're mad. They're not willing to go there. They don't understand it. It's not native to them. I've noticed this specifically in the world of, as I've been diving into my mother wound, my mother hunger, into that realm, there is a deep lack of understanding between daughters who have chosen to remove their mothers from their life and the mother. And they're living in two different worlds. The mother doesn't understand why this is happening and how. And the daughter doesn't understand the mother's viewpoint. And it's because they're living in two completely different worlds. They can't understand each other. Because what has happened up until our generation is those patterns just kept unfolding. There was no interrupt. There was no ability to change them because there was no resources to do that. Unless you joined a cult or a commune or you went to India or any of these ways that people sort of lived an off-grid or alternative life. before we had the internet. Now the internet has created the ability for anyone to do that. If any of these boomer mothers were inclined to, they could Google, why is my daughter not speaking to me? And she would probably find the answers and be able to repair that relationship. But that doesn't occur to this boomer mother. And so I find all of this extremely interesting. It's something that is so multifaceted. It's not just one thing. And I'm interested, of course, because it's unfolding in my life as well. And I'm reflecting on my own patterns, my own desires, my own unconscious issues and challenges that manifest in my life. And so I thank you for coming along this journey with me. There is no resolution thus far, but what I've shared with you today is that I feel unease. I feel self-critical. I often fear losing the things I love. I often judge myself, and I'm okay with all of that. It's part of life. I don't need to pretend that I'm some authority that is different to you, that I've got all my shit together because I'm sharing something online. That is what I stand to tear down. So thanks for being with me. Thanks for listening to my deepest, darkest shame. Please let me know if you've experienced anything like what I've shared today. And if you have any tips on feeling at ease and creating adult friendships, let me know. I'm just a human after all, just like you. If you enjoyed this episode and like reading as much as you do listening, I would love to welcome you as another subscriber to my newsletter. Head on over to mymamasummer.com to subscribe and let me know what you loved most about this episode. I love hearing your feedback. It's my favorite part of sharing what's on my heart. I'll see you over there. Have a beautiful day.